Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hope everybody is having a great and wonderful day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a moment. Just giving an opportunity for you to share this broadcast. This is a very important broadcast that will be very, very helpful to a lot of people, a lot of parents. Going to give you some helpful things. All right. So how's everybody doing this morning? I am using daylight because I like daylight. I'd rather use sunlight for my lighting, natural lighting, rather than the lights overhead. Good morning, Pastor Ben. All right. This is primarily for parents, but it is helpful information. Even if you don't have children, but you have a lot of nieces, nephews, cousins that you are close to. So this information is information that can help in a lot of different ways. And I want to talk about the school year and off to a leading start. Off to a leading start. All right. And this is from an article that I wrote a couple years back, but the information is still pertinent and important, especially in the time in which we are in. I'll tell you a little bit about my background because I know oftentimes people talk about subjects, but they don't necessarily have any experience in these subjects. And so my experience is 15 years as a teacher, as an educator, as someone who has sat on planning boards, education committees, as someone who has helped design curriculum and done curriculum consulting. So that is the perspective that I'm coming from. I spent 6 years in the private school sector, both Christian and non-Christian, and 9 years in the public school sector. I taught in the elementary, middle, and high school levels, so I got a chance to see the needs of students on each one of those levels. So that is my professional background, which is why I wanted to come and kind of give an overview for parents of some things that can help them and their child to be off to a leading start. Yes, you can start off the school year, but most of us know that the way your child starts the school year can often determine whether or not they will finish successfully. And that is the key, successfully. All right. So as I thought about this upcoming school year, I began to think about the parents and the students that would stream through doors across the country. We know in certain parts of the country, school started this week. And we know throughout this next couple of weeks that school will be starting in different places across the country. And so here are a few time-tested guidelines for starting the school year right. Number 1, all right? And if I have a scribe in here, please feel free to put some points up for me. Number 1, please go to orientation. Go to your child's orientation. This includes the orientation before school starts, the orientation that happens or the open house that happens within the first couple of weeks of school. This also includes sports orientations. This also includes honor society orientations. Please go to your child's orientations. All right. This is highly important, especially if the school is new or if your child is making a transition. Say they're making a transition from elementary to middle school, or they're making a transition from middle school to high school, and of course, high school to college campus. This allows your child to familiarize themselves with the layout of the school grounds and not look like a deer caught in headlights on the first day of school. I know. That can be one of the most disorienting things of a child on their first day of school, especially, like I said, if it's a new environment. They may be nervous about this new place, this new level that they're going to. And the last thing they need is to have that coupled with not knowing where they're going. So it's very good to allow your child to be able to go to the orientation, look around the school, learn where things are, where's the cafeteria, where's the restroom, learn where their classes are. A lot of times when orientation is done, they actually do a mock run through of, the bell schedule so that students can, map out and walk out where their classes are. But guess what? If your child is not going to orientation, they don't get that experience, okay? So this is why it could seem like, I know when I was younger, there would be kids walking around and not knowing where they were going, but everybody else looked like they knew where they were going. Well, that's why. They participated in orientation, which is to not only orient you to the administrators, but it's also to orient you to the environment that you're going to be in. All right. For special needs children, this is especially important to begin helping to establish their routines for the school year, helping them to locate necessary offices in the building for the first days of school. This can decrease anxiety and stress levels for a child that gets easily lost or easily frustrated. They can spend the first day of school learning their peers and not feeling inadequate learning the space and layout of the building. One of the biggest complaints I have heard from students, all right, is that they wish they had gone to orientation and not have had to play catch up on needed to know information that the other students already knew. All right. And also, I know some schools tend to, they might send you a packet over the summer of all the forms and things. Some schools are more proactive than others. Some schools will send you all of that information that the parent needs to sign for the beginning of the school year. They'll send it out towards the end of the summer so that, that first week of school, they are collecting the forms that are needed. Okay. If your child has not started school yet and they have not sent those forms, like student release forms, field trip forms, yada, yada, etc. Student code of conduct books. If they haven't sent any of that to you yet, they're already behind. I'm just going to be honest with you. But if school year has not started yet, you can still call your school and request those materials be sent to you before school starts. All right. And at that point, by now, they should have all that ready, all those things printed and prepared. And so they shouldn't have a problem sending out those necessary information. Why? Because you want time to read over it. You want time to look over it. We know that last year and even into this year, that in the school year that ended, coming into 2017, we know that there was a lot of controversy, right, around school policies. We know there was a lot of controversy around dress codes. So I would definitely say this school year, make sure you are reading over dress code policies. Make sure you're reading over absence policies. Make sure you are reading over administrative discipline policies, because a lot of times they may change policies but not necessarily tell you that those policies have been changed. Okay, because one thing I have learned is, as long as you sign that form and turn it into them saying you have read the student handbook or you've received it, then the liability is off of the school. All right. So don't go signing forms when you have not read the material that they've handed out to you. I know sometimes parents are just like, oh, just give me the form, let me sign. But in this day and this hour, you need to be reading the material that's given to you by schools. All right. Number 2, meet the guidance counselor. Meet the guidance counselor. Meet the head of guidance and meet the guidance counselor that's going to be working specifically with your child. This is the person, and this is like, I can't even stress how important it is to know your guidance counselor and to have a good rapport with your guidance counselor for your child. This is the person who will be scheduling your child's classes, not the principal, not the assistant principal. And this is especially important as your child is moving from middle school to high school. This is the person who will be scheduling your child's classes. It is very important to have a guidance counselor whose goal is to meet the needs of your child and not simply pass them through the minimal requirements. Find out their philosophy for guidance, and if you feel uncomfortable with their approach, request another counselor to be assigned to your child. I know a lot of times they have schools now, they quote unquote randomly, some schools do a random mixture of children being assigned to a counselor. Some schools do it in alphabetical order. But if you have a serious problem with your child's guidance counselor and you do not feel comfortable with that guidance counselor's approach or philosophy for guidance, request another counselor to be assigned to your child if possible. As a high school student, it is imperative that your child have a guidance counselor that wants them to excel and reach their highest educational potential. Welcome, Prophet. As a high school student, it is imperative that your child have a guidance counselor that wants them to excel and reach their highest educational potential. If there's any question about the courses that your child is enrolled in and how they will prepare them for their future, this will be the place and person that you will have to go to first. All right? You can also speak to your school board office and your State Department of Education if you feel as though your questions are not properly addressed. Listen, your child gets one shot in high school. It is up to you that they do not miss any coursework that can secure a better financial future for them. So, you want to make sure that your guidance counselor is on board with your child's educational goals. So make sure you don't get stuck with a guidance counselor who's only trying to give your child minimal requirement classes. Okay? I cannot tell you how many students that I worked with and encountered that by the time they got to their senior year, okay, they were nowhere near their educational goals that they needed to have because they had a horrible guidance counselor. They had a guidance counselor who didn't really care about them as a student. They had a guidance counselor who did not give them the coursework or did not schedule them for the coursework that was necessary to meet the college requirements that they were trying to get into. All right? A lot of schools, depending on what state you're in, a lot of schools now have different kinds of diplomas. And really all it is more of a separation to try to figure out who's going to college and who's not. Okay? So now I know in Virginia, there's about 4 different kinds of high school diplomas. There is the certificate of completion, which basically means you went to high school, but it doesn't matter. Okay, that's called a certificate of completion. You went to high school. Okay, but in terms of credits, in terms of anything you're going to get as far as credit toward vocational, junior college, it's not on there. Then there is the special diploma, all right, which has to do with children with special needs. Then there is the regular diploma, which are, this is where you are completing coursework in high school that maybe can get you into a 2-year community college or a vocational school. And then there is the college readiness diploma, right? The college prep. That's the stream that they would call it. All right. And that's where you are actually needing certain amounts of credits in math, certain amounts of credits in your sciences, certain sciences you have to take in order to get into a 4-year college. Now, you could do something below a 4-year college with that high school diploma, but it is supposed to prepare you to be able to get into a 4-year college. So one of the things that I'm finding is that this is not being explained to parents, okay? And it is the job of your guidance counselor to make these explanations. But here's the thing. If you're not asking any questions as a parent, or if you don't know the right questions to ask, then it's almost like a don't ask, don't tell. If you don't ask me the question, in many cases, I don't have to tell you the information. So, especially on the high school level, make sure that your child's guidance counselor knows what your child's goals are. If your child's goal is to finish school and apply to a 4-year college, then they need coursework that is equivalent to where they're trying to go. And if you see that your child's guidance counselor is not giving your child coursework that's equivalent to where they're trying to go, then you need to be on that. You need to be calling the school. You need to be demanding some meetings with your assistant principal, principal, head of administration, head of guidance, and they need to get your child on the right course, all right? Because what you don't want to happen, like many of the students I've worked with, you don't want them to get to senior year and them recognize they're either credit short, or they're either a subject matter short, or they're either in such a low level of math or English or science that they don't even have the time to even catch up to the sciences and math that they need. And, you know, it is a hurtful thing to see the look of disappointment on a student's face when they realize, man, I just went to school for 12 years and I'm at the end of my years and I don't have the requirements I need to go to college. And it happens, believe me, it happens more often than you think. All right. So number 3, go to open house. This is an opportunity for you to get a layout of the class space, seating. You know, some schools still do, seating or seating charts where they've already figured out where they want to put your child in a class. Listen, I was tutoring a student, and this particular student was making straight F's in his class. And as I was tutoring him, because when I do tutor, I do what I call holistic tutoring. So I do student preparation. I show them how to get organized. I do test-taking skills with them. I do study skills with them, and I tutor on the subject. So as I was having a conversation with this particular student, and he had showed me his report card, and after his report card was when they brought me on to do his tutoring. I was talking to him, and he said, this particular teacher doesn't like black people. All right. Now, we know a lot of times you cannot prove bias. Okay. Many times teachers who are prejudiced or have some sort of bigotry operating, they are very good at not verbally showing it or not verbally saying it. But we know in 2017, good morning, we know in 2017 America, a lot of these educators who are racist feel emboldened, all right, by our leader of the free world. But he said, my teacher doesn't like black people. And I noticed that she put all of the black people in the back of the class. And he was saying that for him, he felt like he was failing because she was ignoring their questions in class, and that she pretty much didn't pay attention to them since she had set them in the back of the class. And he was like, I'm a person that gets really distracted by people being in front of me. And then he said, and also I kind of feel like I might need glasses because I do struggle to see the board. So he had a couple of different things going on. We were able to obviously get him the pair of glasses. That was an easy fix. But his parent had to advocate for moving him in the class because his teacher had decided that black kids really don't want to learn. So she put all of them to the back of the class. All right. As his tutor, I worked with the tutor, the teacher, and the parent. The teacher and the parent. So it was a threefold cohort: tutor, teacher, parent. And we got her to move him to the front of the class. He was able to see. Having the students behind him as opposed to in front of him eliminated the distraction. And guess what? The next semester, he made a B. After that, he graduated as a student scholar athlete. He could have gone for the football scholarship because he was a well-known player, but he chose to go the scholar route. Now he's a sophomore at the University of Berkeley at the School of Music. What am I saying? I am saying that parents need to be invested and involved in their child's life. And all I did was listen to him as I was tutoring him and talk to him and said, what is going on with this F? Why do you have an F in this class? And he just began to tell me all of what was going on in the class that had not been addressed. All right. So once we got the parent involved, once the parent knew what things to tackle, we were able to both go as a unified front to the teacher to say, hey, you're not going to put this student in the back and just forget about him. All right. And one thing I will say is people do react and respond differently when they see parent involvement. If they feel like you do not care, they will not care. As a matter of fact, I have seen oftentimes that the students who get the poorest treatment usually are the students who actually need the most help. But if the administration or even the teacher or even the counselor sees an uninvolved parent, then they feel like they don't have to step up to the plate to take care of that student's needs. Okay? It's something that ticked me off about public school. Which is why I had to go into education entrepreneurship. So go to open house, talk with your child's teachers, take a detailed look at the curriculum. All right. And it is a big red flag. It is a big red flag if you ask the teacher to show you what the first week's curriculum looks like, and she says it's not ready yet, or she says I don't have it prepared yet. That's a red flag. Okay? Because as an educator, it is her job to not just really have the first week ready, but as an educator who is prepared for her students, is actually her job to at least have the first 9 weeks ready. So that's a whole nother issue. But if your teacher is unprepared, she's already going to be under pressure when she comes in the classroom. And therefore, anything, right, that the students do may put more pressure on her because she's not prepared. All right. One of the things in teacher training, they tell you, you need to have your first 9 weeks prepared. You need to have a discipline plan prepared. You don't need to be trying to figure out what you're going to do if a student causes a disruption in your class or acts up or any of that. You're supposed to have a plan already. You're not supposed to be just blurting out stuff or just acting in the moment. You're supposed to be prepared. All right. So take a detailed look at the curriculum and the textbooks, and take inventory of your child's interaction with the teacher, as well as the teacher's interaction with your child and other children. And you can do this in orientation. Just pay attention. All right. Ask about the grading scale. This is another issue that parents kind of bypass. Ask about the grading scale. Usually in the student handbook, they already have a grading scale set in there. But I can tell you right now that most schools allow teachers, as long as their grading scale is not way off from what's in the student manual, most schools allow teachers to kind of create their own sliding grading scale. This is important to know, because you can look at the student handbook's grading scale and then your child get to class and then you find out 90% of their grade is based on tests, right? Or you find out 50% of their grade is based on participation. And if you have a child that has medical concerns or health concerns, then guess what? They may be out of school more than another child. So if 50% of their grade is based on participation, that is going to handicap your child's grade. So you definitely want to know what the grading scale is, know what the grading policies are, know what their policies are on late assignments, and whether or not your child can correct an assignment. There are some teachers that will not allow your child to turn in the assignment late. They will just give your child a 0. Well, guess what? For every 0, it's almost like for every 0 your child gets, it's almost like they have to earn 3 to 4 A's in order to compensate for that 0. All right. So these are some things that you want to make sure you understand. And the crazy thing about it is, if your child has 4, 5, 6 teachers, each one of those teachers may be using a different grading policy. So it's important that you look over the information that your child is being given about each one of their classes. Make sure that you understand what your child is being asked. Make sure you understand even the discipline policies of that teacher in that classroom. All right. Number 4. Again, read the syllabus, grading policies, and classroom contracts before signing off. Read them with your child and ask them to tell you what they think the policies mean. If there's anything you don't understand or any policy that looks completely different from the general handbook grading policies, request a meeting. Don't sign off on something that you are not comfortable signing off with as a parent. It is your right to say, I need a meeting or I need clarity before I sign this paper. I'm not comfortable with what I'm reading. And if you can't, if you really feel that uncomfortable, then you might need to talk to the guidance counselor about possibly switching your child maybe even to another instructor that teaches the same coursework. Okay. In a larger high school, I know this is possible. There are teachers that teach the same coursework. All right. Let's see. If resistance arises, like I said, request a meeting with the teacher, the team leader, and the principal if necessary. Number 5. Limit. Yes. Parents can do that. They sure can. But again, as I said, if you don't know what to ask, they won't tell you. There's a lot of things that parents can request, but those who don't want to do it, because they feel like it's more paperwork, or they're lazy, just put it where it is, they're not going to tell you what your options are. That's why I'm doing this broadcast. And I hope that you will share it out widely, because more parents need to understand they have rights. They have rights. Just like the students have rights, the parents have rights too. Okay? Number 5, limit technology, social and entertaining, and establish a curfew, especially for the weekdays, until the first grading quarter is up. Parents, you cannot make an honest assessment of how your child will do in school if they're waking up to the DS3, they're coming home to the We Play or the virtual reality glasses or whatever else these days, okay, and go to bed on Facebook, okay, with the phone plastered to the side of their cheek. If your child does well the first grading quarter, you can reassess their limits then. If they do poorly, you can be assured that the distraction of their technology will not improve their performance. All right. Now, I know at the high school that I was at, they were a little more technologically advanced. And so a lot of the assignments that the students had to do were on what they call the Blackboard. I know some states may use something else, but it's an overall web or net where they upload their assignments into that and they do their homework, etc., or they receive assignments. They can get their grades on there if the teacher is not lazy and the teacher is on top of their game and they're grading the work and they're uploading the grades so they can start seeing and tracking their grade point average throughout the school year on a regular basis, which is a good system. All right. So yes, there will be times when your child will need to use technology, but I'm talking about the social and entertaining stuff. You definitely want to limit that so you can get a good handle on how they're going to do for the school year. Because again, if they do poorly without all of the technology, chances are they're probably not going to do better with increased entertainment. All right. So you got to, as a parent, you got to put your foot down at some time and establish some boundaries, because the goal is for them to not be repeating a grade level. The goal is for them to get out and graduate. And of course, we know some states offer virtual high school, virtual classes. I know Florida and Virginia does. And so they can even take additional classes if they want to graduate early. They're just saying, hey, high school bores me. I need to move on. Don't hold your child back. All right. I like to tell people, because it is true, both education wise and historically, public school, if your child is in public school is normative education. What do I mean by that? Public school is for the normal, average, intelligent child. That's what public school is for. All right. And therefore, if you know you have an exceptionally gifted or exceptionally bright child, don't just hold them to the restrictions and confines of public school. All right. So if they are an accelerated learner and they want to take other courses and they're telling you, this is not challenging for me, please listen to your child. Okay. A lot of the behavior problems that I saw coming through public school, especially middle and high school, had to do with the fact that the work was not challenging enough. Didn't mean that some of the work was not right. It just meant that those particular students were brighter than the level they were on. All right. So if your child is asking to be challenged, that is okay. You need to find out if there is virtual classes that your child can take to accelerate their coursework. Okay. And I'm going to say this. Children of other skin colors do it all the time. Okay. At the school I was at, there was a whole group of Asian students that were doing high school work, and they were doing virtual high school because they were trying to accelerate their schedule and get into college early. So, again, public school is normative education. It is for the average intelligent student, which means public school for the most part does not focus on the gifted or those who have serious special needs. This is why at both ends of those spectrums, parents tend to struggle with getting the adequate educational needs of their child met, because public school for the most part is for the average intelligence child. Number 6, offer to volunteer at the school at least quarterly. Now, I know some parents, depending on your socioeconomic level, etc., may not be able to do this. I know there are some parents working 2 and 3 jobs. There are single parent homes, as well as 2-parent homes. But if there's a time, even if you can't do quarterly, if there's a time where you can at least volunteer for one school event, it doesn't have to be a field trip. Maybe your child is in sports, okay? And they might want you to do something like collect money or help go out and do some fundraising or show up and take tickets, whatever it is. At least offer to volunteer to do something at the school to show your parent involvement. I'm telling you, it makes a difference. Whether that is helping with baked goods for a baked goods sale, being a parent chaperone for a certain number of trips, getting involved and showing your support for the school. How would this one work for homeschoolers? Getting involved with a homeschool network. Okay, I know in Virginia, over 30,000 students are homeschooled. Some of the parents are very, very, very isolated. A lot of the parents that homeschool in Virginia have a college degree, and so they do a lot of the homeschooling themselves. Some of them have masters and doctorates, so they kind of isolate their child. But I always say, if you're going to do homeschooling, it's best if you do it with a homeschool association. That way, I know the ones in Virginia, the kids go out on field trips together, so your child is still getting that socialization piece of being around other children. To me, that's important. They go on field trips together. I know here they have started several homeschool sports leagues. So even if your child is into sports, they can still do it within that context. All right. I do know that they were trying to, in Virginia, they were trying to pass some kind of legislation that would allow homeschool students to sign up for sports within public school, but I think they're being fought on that. All right. Number 7, set up your parent-teacher conference dates by the end of the second week of school. When making meetings with your child's teacher a priority, when you make that a priority, it signals to the teacher that you are committed to the process of education and that you will not only be there to show up when something isn't right. That is a huge pet peeve for us educators. Yes. We don't want to just see you when you are ready to tear our heads off. We do not want to see, your shenanay, right? And we've never seen you in any other time. We've never seen you in any other light. But Johnny comes home and tells you that the teacher said something he didn't like. And then the next day, we haven't seen you in 8 weeks of school. And then the next day you come up and you want to show your tail and cuss out the teacher. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. You do not want to burn bridges with your child's educator. I'm just being honest, because I've seen when teachers are fed up with a parent, I have seen them shut down. You do not want to burn bridges with your child's educator. All right? So we don't want you to show up only when something isn't right. You are supposed to be building rapport. Okay? Remember, you are in this together. Parent, teacher, student. Parent, teacher, student. Y'all supposed to be in it together. All right? So it's a threefold cord that cannot be broken when the goal is the same. If the teacher wants to see your child succeed, your child wants it, and you want it, then that is a winning formula. Communication allows you to be on the same page and not be pitted against each other. I can't tell you how many times a parent has come in and asked me a question, and I have had to say, this is what your son or daughter did. Okay? I know this is what they told you, but this is what they did. And I always say, with parents and with teachers, make sure you have good records. All right? Take notes. You can even record. I was like, hey, do whatever you have to do to remember what we're talking about. Communication allows you to be on the same page and not pitted against each other. It does not strengthen your communication with the person who has direct influence in the classroom if you bypass them and continue to take your concerns to the administrator, especially if you have not first tried to communicate your concerns or needs to the teacher. This is another educator pet peeve. You have not talked to the teacher. You've gone straight to the principal or straight to the teacher's administrator, and you have not one time spoken to the teacher. That's out of order. Unless you know specifically for sure that this teacher will ignore you, or this teacher will not talk to you, or this teacher has some serious bias and prejudice going on, you really should not be bypassing the teacher. Okay? Because again, what are you trying to do? The ultimate goal is to foster a relationship with the person who's going to be putting the grades in her grade book. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the administrator and that's not the principal. That is the teacher. And I have a saying, and many teachers have a saying, and that is, the pen is mightier than the sword. Okay? Very famous quote. But in education, it means a lot. The pen is mightier than the sword. What does that mean? I'm glad you asked. It means, at the end of the day, that teacher is the one who has to sit down, who has to grade the work, who has to put in the grades, who has to decide how much percentage of their grade is going to be based on your child's grade, your child's participation in their class. And I can tell you, I've seen students who make straight A's in their coursework still not wind up with an A in the class because of their attitude and their lack of participation. All right? And so, again, what am I saying? I'm saying that you have to teach your child that school is about more than just making grades. I know, shocking. I know. But school is also where they develop their character. School is also where they're going to find out that you can't just manipulate your way through anything. School is where they're going to find out that you can be excellent at what you do and have a bad attitude and still not get the grade you thought you should have gotten because your attitude was jacked up. Because your participation was jacked up. This is where their character is forged. All right? It's formed, it's shaped. Number 8. If you know your child has organizational struggles or has had discipline issues in the past, let the teacher know. I know, this seems counterproductive. No, it's actually very helpful for the teacher. This does not mean, let me be clear, this does not mean that you go in, giving all specific details, right? This does not mean that you go in bashing your child. That's not what I'm talking about. It shows the teacher that you are trying to be proactive and you want to set your child up for success and not failure. For example, if you know your child is easily distracted, you can say something like, hey, my child, I just want to let you know, heads up, my child is easily distracted. Please do not place my child by a window or near the doorway. Very simple. So if I'm a teacher and I know that ahead of time, I can go to my little seating chart and say, okay, I just found out tonight at orientation that Johnny is a very, very distracted child. He doesn't need to be by a window and he doesn't need to be by a door. Who can I move before I meet them? Who can I move so that this will not be a problem with me and Johnny coming into the door? That was very simple. All right. You can also request, and this is also on the lower levels like elementary school. Okay. You can also request weekly monitoring that your child is aware of. Okay. This oftentimes ends many disagreements because you are being kept abreast of the behavior either by email or a hard copy note. As an educator, I rarely had to dispute the grades or the effort scores of students who had progress notes. I didn't have to dispute it because I was keeping a weekly progress log on my students, and their parents were being kept in the know as to how their child was behaving or misbehaving. So by the end, I didn't have to have a whole argument, a long drawn out, drag out fight, a meeting with my superiors over a child's grades or their participation because I was proactive. And if the teachers are not doing this, again, as a parent, you can request it. You can request it. Number 9, and I'm almost done. Number 9. Pray for your child and everyone involved in their learning process. Exactly, Bespoke. No one was shocked. We took away all the elements of surprise. Pray for your child and everyone involved in their learning process. You are the God-given first line of defense for your child. You are the God-given first line of defense for your child. I'm going to say it one more time. You are the God-given first line of defense for your child. Is it a great feeling as a parent when you find out that the teachers for your child may also be believers? That would be a plus. But most of them are not going to outwardly come out and say, I'm a Christian. All right? Because of, especially in public schools, because of where they are. But you are the God-given first line of defense for your child. Send them to school knowing they are covered by God, cared for, protected, and loved by you. Please, I know I shouldn't have to say this. Hug your child. Please, hug your child. They are looking for your attention in the morning. I know this is true, especially with elementary school. Sometimes with middle school, you don't know who they are for the day. I get it. Some of them have mood swings. Sometimes they're 5, sometimes they're 13, sometimes they're 33. I get it. That's middle school. All right? So with your middle school students, you may want to say, hey, do you feel like a hug today? Before you just reach out and smother them. But please hug your child. High school, I know most of them just want to get away from you. I get it. But you always at least want to ask, do you need a hug this morning before we head out the door? All right? Hug your child. It does make a difference. They are looking for your attention in the morning. Please give it to them. I'm telling you now, if they do not have your attention, they will go find it somewhere else. They will find it amongst their peers. I wound up with a lot of adopted children, okay? Even after I've left education, I still have young students who are now young adults who still are a part of my life because they adopted me. I didn't ask to be their mother. They made me their mother. And I don't turn children away. All right. So if you don't give them the attention, they're going to go find it. And sometimes where they find the attention is connecting to somebody who doesn't mean them any good. All right. Your speakerphone call can wait. All right. Parents, give your child in the morning the attention they deserve. The most self-assured students that I have had the pleasure to educate are those who arrive to school already confident that they are able to take on the day. Why? Because someone in their household told them so. My most successful students were the students who had good communication with their parents. They had a confidence coming in the door saying, let's do this. What you got for me today? So it is important that you are taking a moment. I know things can get hectic. I know you may sometimes have other things going on. You may be driving your child to school, or you may have 3 or 4 kids you have to drop off at different schools. I get it. Or you even may be a homeschool parent. And even if you're a homeschool parent, you still don't need to take for granted that just because you're schooling them at home, that they don't need your affection outside of the schoolwork that you're giving them. All right? So, lastly, remember that teachers have feelings too. Please. Teachers have feelings too. Most teachers are in the profession, most, I would say probably about 85%, 90%, somewhere in there. Most teachers are in the profession because they are committed to improving the future generation. And they believe that education is the most powerful way to do that. Please be mindful that teachers have feelings too. I can tell you, nationwide, we do not get paid enough. We don't. And if you're a first-year teacher, you really don't get paid enough. All right? So nobody is in America, nobody is in teaching to get rich. That's not the career you go into if you want to get rich. So you've got to be in it for other reasons, and you've got to be in it because you actually care about the future. All right? I know some people are misguided and they get into the teaching field for other reasons. But most of them are committed to improving the future generation, and we do believe that education is the most powerful way to do that. Some of them are working more than one job because we don't get paid enough. So we can't pay our bills off of our salary. Some of them are working more than one job, or they're only employed half days due to budget cuts. So your child may get a teacher that only works for half the day because their school cannot afford to hire them full time. So please cut the teachers a little bit of slack. My former director would say, if you believe half of what they say about us, we will believe half of what they tell us about you. Because believe it or not, they may go home and talk about us to you, but you better believe they come to school and talk about you to us. Okay? And so we have to take some of what they say about their parents with a grain of salt, because sometimes they're just angry at their parents or they're frustrated at their parents. And so if I took everything that my students said literally about their parents, I would be on the phone calling Department of Children and Family Services. But I have to know as an educator, okay, that sometimes the students are just saying some things just because they're angry or they're frustrated at their parents at the moment. All right. So in other words, misunderstanding and miscommunication can and does happen, but if everyone is committed to the student's success, you find a way to work together towards the end goal. You may not like every teacher on your child's roster, but you can show your child how to cooperate even with a seemingly difficult person to achieve an end goal. All right? So, I would not be the parent that's always moving my kid from a difficult person. All right? Because then what you're teaching your child is that anytime they face difficulty, get around it or run away from it. Okay? So, again, in utilizing the ability to say, I need to request another adult teach my child, make sure you're not just doing it because you have a personality conflict with the teacher. Make sure it's actually a real solid reason as to why you would want your child removed from a teacher's class and placed in somebody else's class. All right. Just wanted to throw that in there. Trust me when I say your children are taking their cue on how to problem solve or how to manipulate and sabotage from you. I encourage you to make this school year the best one yet and give your child the tools necessary to start the school year from a leading position. I'll tell you one story and then we will close for today. Let's see how much time we got. I had a couple of students and I said, I will never forget these students because they taught me a huge lesson. Their parents were manipulative. And so because the parents were manipulative, the children became manipulative. And these children literally got a kick out of going around and lying on educators to get them fired. So when I say be aware of your behavior, your action with educators, because your children are watching and they will start operating like you. And the buck stopped with me. These two students, they were a brother and a sister, and they brought an accusation against me. And it was a serious accusation. And so I had to hire an attorney and get some investigation work done so that I could actually put a stop to these two kids, because literally they were going around. They had been moved from different schools, but the pattern was these two students would accuse an educator almost like a bet, because they came from a very wealthy family. They would accuse an educator and get that educator fired. And this was like the third school that they had made it to, and they had decided to make me their target. And so you have to be careful as a parent what kind of attitude that you are setting, what kind of culture are you setting even with your children, and how they handle adults, how they handle authority and authority figures. All right. So this was Daring Dialogue today. Hope that you will share this widely. And I hope that I have said something today that is going to help you as a parent. I hope the administrators are listening. And I hope the educators are listening as well. Listen, I want everybody to have a great year. But I'm going to tell you, I will always be on the side of the student. When it all comes down to it, I want students to have a bright future. I want them to be able to have a safe environment. I want them to be able to have educators that are backing them 1,000%, as long as it's moral. They're not breaking any laws to do that. And so I'm always going to be on the side of the student. And so that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to specifically talk to parents because sometimes you don't know. And if you don't know, then you can't improve. If you don't know the right questions to ask, then you can't ask them. All right. So thank you again for your time and attention on Daring Dialogues. We will be back tomorrow with our Thinking Thursday, our Theology Thursday, and we will be back talking about the essence of Christ, among other things. All right. Thank you again. Take care and God bless. Oh, and if you have a education question, or if you are looking for someone to consult for education curriculum, or if you are looking for someone to come and train your teachers and do some teacher training, which I have experience in, please feel free to email me in the email is in my bio. You can email me at reachshantae, name spelling back there, SHANTAE, @gmail.com. All right, take care and God bless.